Alright, so look, man, Uncle Fester has done it again. And, just when you thought that the year couldn't possibly get any crazier, the UFC have gone on and stacked the fourth quarter of 2025 with some of the biggest announcements that we've seen in a very long time. UFC 321 as well as UFC 322 are now shaping up to be historic moments, and honestly, I don't even know where to begin. From Islam Makhachev's welterweight debut against Della Maddalena, to Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko finally going down, all the way to Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates, and a sleeper bantamweight banger between Umar Nurmagomedov and Mario Bautista. These cards are absolutely insane, but without further ado, let's take a deep dive into what Dana White has lined up for us for what I like to call Bloody October. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share so you can help me reach 3,000 subscribers by May. I'll deeply appreciate you. And make sure you join the official UFC Discord, link in the description. Alright, so look, first up, we've got the big one. The former pound-for-pound king, Islam Makhachev, is officially making his jump to welterweight. And, not just for your run-of-the-mill regular schmegular fight. He's stepping right into the fire against the 170-pound king, Della Maddalena. And, Islam has sorta, relatively cleaned out the lightweight division already, and after back-to-back title defenses, it's kind of clear that the UFC wants to test his greatness in a whole new way. But when you think about it, the crazy thing is that Della Maddalena has barely even held the belt for it's 6 months, and already he's being thrown into the deep end against one of the most dominant fighters the sport has ever seen. It's some seriously wild matchmaking, but it kind of makes perfect sense. Islam Makhachev has been wanting that double championship status for a long while now, and Della Maddalena, being the Australian mad lad that he is, ain't shying away from anyone. And, stylistically, this fight is a fascinating one. Islam Makhachev has the wrestling, the suffocating top control, the well-rounded striking that has carried him to greatness all this time. But Della Maddalena's slick striking, ridiculous composure in the pocket, as well as his Craig Jones battle-tested takedown defense makes him one of the toughest puzzles to solve at 170 pounds. But for my super early pre-fight prediction, I think this comes to no surprise, but I'll be leaning toward Della Maddalena to get the job done against Islam Makhachev. And look, it's not that I'm doubting Islam Makhachev's skills whatsoever. He's a legend already. But Della Maddalena's size, his pressure, his precise striking, as well as his high level and always evolving takedown defense might just be a little too much for the Dagestani in my opinion. And mark my words, we're getting back for Volk if it's the last thing we do. But either way, this fight feels like one for the ages, and I'll definitely be breaking it down in way more detail later on in a dedicated video. But if that wasn't enough, the co-main event for UFC 322 might just be the biggest women's fight in mixed martial arts history. Zhang Weili has officially vacated her strawweight belt to move up in order to challenge Valentina Shevchenko for the women's flyweight title. And now, this is a huge deal for a couple reasons. First, it confirms the UFC's new policy. No more simultaneous champs. And if you want to move up, then you've got to relinquish your belt first. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And, honestly, I think that was a pretty terrible rule change on the UFC's part, but hey, the UFC's gonna do what the UFC's gonna do. But for the fight itself, this is a dream matchup that hardcore fans have been wanting to see for years now. Two of the greatest women's mixed martial artists of all time finally throwing down. But you see, the only downside about all of this is that it's happening a little too late, in my opinion. I mean, both women are in their mid to late 30s now, with Valentina Shevchenko being 37 years of age and Zhang Weili being 36. Not to mention that Valentina Shevchenko has also been through some wars lately, including that insane trilogy with Alexa Grasso, as well as her 5-round battle with Manon Fior. Me personally, I think she's a little more war-torn than Zhang Weili at this point, but make no mistake, she is still dangerous. All in all though, this fight is going to be all about high-level technique, speed, as well as timing. Zhang Weili brings that relentless pressure, that explosiveness, as well as her improved grappling. While, on the other hand, Valentina Shevchenko has her signature counter-striking, composure, as well as her championship-level experience. But regardless of how it all plays out, this is going to be a spectacle and one of those fights that just defines the legacy of women's MMA altogether. Also featured on UFC 322 is an absolute banger. Leon Scott Scissorhands Edwards versus Carlos Prates. And now, this is the kind of fight that the fans have just been begging for. I mean, on one side, you've got Leon Edwards, the former welterweight champ, now looking to bounce back after dropping 2 in a row. While Carlos Prates is riding major momentum after that insane spinning elbow knockout of Jeff Neal at UFC 319. And if memory serves me right, he did call for a Brazil Fight Night matchup, but clearly the UFC have bigger and better plans for him. Stylistically though, this is going to be pure fireworks. I mean, Leon Scott is one of the smoothest strikers in the division, with his elite kickboxing, crisp counters, as well as that championship level experience. Meanwhile, Carlos Prates brings that relentless pressure, his rangy striking, and not to mention that terrifying knockout power. Ultimately, it's going to be the true test for Carlos Prates in order to see if he can break into the welterweight's top 5. And for Leon Scott, it's a chance to remind everyone that he's still one of the best in the world. And, you know, at the end of the day, this fight just smells like a fight of the night just waiting to happen. And man, I can't fluff and wait. But rounding out the big announcements is a low-key but super important fight for the bantamweight division. That being Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista. And look, Umar Nurmagomedov is making his comeback after his loss to Merab Dvalishvili back in January, plus the hand injury that followed. This is going to be a majorly huge fight for him, essentially because it's going to be a chance for him to reestablish himself as a top contender at 135 pounds. On the flip side, Mario Bautista is quietly putting together an incredible run. I mean, he's on an 8-fight winning streak with his most recent victory coming over Patchy Mix. And, you know, this fight could easily determine the next man up in the title picture after Petr Yan and the winner of Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey the Sandman Sanhagen. So don't be surprised if it turns out to be a dark horse fight of the Abu Dhabi card. Oh! And just before I close, let us not forget to mention UFC 321, which has also gotten a huge shakeup thanks to Zhang Weili's move up to the flyweight division. Because with her vacating her belt, the UFC have now booked Mackenzie Dern versus Verena Jandiroba for the now vacant strawweight title. And look, this is a rematch of their first fight 5 years ago where Mackenzie Dern got the nod by decision. But both women have leveled up since then, and now the stakes couldn't be higher. And, you know, this is going to be a very intriguing fight to see who claims throne as the next strawweight queen. But at the end of the day, when you look at the bigger picture, Dana White has now officially stacked the last quarter of 2025 with some of the biggest fights possible. I mean, we've got pound-for-pound greats chasing double champ status, legendary women's fighters colliding, striking dream matchups, and pivotal bantamweight battles. I mean, UFC 321 as well as UFC 322 might not just be the best cards of the year, but they could possibly go down as some of the best cards of all time. The UFC is closing out 2025 with a bang, and I couldn't be more excited. But that's all I've got to say for this video. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your guys' thoughts on the new fights announced by Uncle Fester a few days ago? Those being Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko, Leon Scott Scissorhands Edwards versus Carlos Prates, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Bautista, and last but certainly not least, Mackenzie Dern versus Varine Jandiroba. Let me know in the comment section below. But that about wraps up the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.